אני פותח את הישיבה ה-110 של
I open the
המשפט.
110th session of the trial. We shall now listen to the summing up by the Attorney General. Before that, I give decision number 100. I decide that the summing up of both parties will be recorded by a shorthand typist, and that in accordance with my decision of the 30th June 61. Please, Mr. Hausner.
If it please the court. In this trial, we see before our eyes the picture of a regime which threatened our generation and was a menace according to which an end was to be brought to the freedom of nations and freedom of individual. Here, the shadows of Adolf Hitler and his accomplices are hovering around us. These are those ghoulish personalities that humanity is going to remember them forever. Adolf Eichmann, who is standing trial before you, acted as his leader and perpetuated the crimes thrust upon him on the leader. And he was the instrument of the destructive force. What was he doing? Towards the outside world, he would resort into prevarications and into glib tongue in order to conceal the bottomless hatred and murderous fury. For 2 months, the survivors of this terrible Holocaust have taken their places in the witness box, and they have given their testimony here. Each has told of that segment of the terrible tragedy of which he was asked to testify, until the picture of the horror emerged. We were shocked to hear of murder, brutality, tortures and atrocities, which, had they not been described by living men and women, it would have been possible to believe that they have been perpetrated by human hands. We have heard of acts of cruelty and lust for evil, degradation, oppression of body and soul, the like of which have never been known in the annals of mankind. We were shaken when Auschwitz, the ashen planet, which the Nazis sent into orbit in the skies of Europe, from whose soil Jewish blood welled forth and in the form of a spout. All this has been depicted to us. We have heard of rabbis and servants of the Lord ordered to put on their phylacteries and praying shawls and thrust into the flames amid the mockery of their tormentors. We saw before us the tortures in the camp, the lashes, the degradation, humiliation, and we have been horrified to see the depth of wickedness to which men can sink in their behavior to their fellow men. We have heard of rats put into the clothing of the prisoners at Helmno, while they were ordered to stand without moving a muscle. We heard of the parachute game of the camp staff, who told the Jews to climb up to the roofs and jump, and whoever did not jump properly was shot. We have heard of dogs being set on human beings with the order, man seize the dog. We have heard of boys being hanged to the sound of merry marching songs played by the camp orchestra, of babes and sucklings thrown alive into the fire after their mothers had protected them with their bodies and saved them from asphyxiation in the gas chambers. I believe that if any man should try to imagine a nightmare, he would not succeed in inventing even one tiny fraction of the appalling things that have been presented and described here. All these things have been heard by the man who sits in the glass dock. We have seen him watching observantly, taking in the testimony, following descriptions, looking at the films that have shown all the horrors of the hell, and then came his turn to testify. It might have been expected that today, at least, 16 years after the limbs of the Nazi Hydra have been severed, he would at least utter one word of regret and repentance, one syllable of remorse. Instead, his testimony began with the well-known Nazi falsehood about the war that was forced upon Germany, and his cynicism reached the point of declaring that the war against Jewry was also forced upon the German people. He had declared that he does not believe in regret, since it would be childish, for the dead cannot be restored to life. In what does he believe? That the oath of allegiance which he swore to Hitler absolves him from all responsibility for his deeds, and serves to justify completely whatever he has done. This we have seen during the weeks in which he has given his testimony. And later we saw him skulking among the documents, brazenly denying facts that cry out from every piece of evidence, searching for excuses and pretexts, every one of which is designed to conceal and cover up the crime of the blood that has been spilt, and his share in this great monstrous crime. To achieve this, he's been ready to deny his own statements, to recant his own confessions, to claim the documents have been forged, that witnesses and even his own testimony are mistaken, that reports are false, and that phrases in official papers are incorrect. That is what he has to say in the face of what he himself calls one of the most terrible crimes in the history of humanity. The paper barricade and prevarications that he has tried to erect with such care and diligence, with a view to casting off responsibility so as not to see, not to feel, and not to hear. This is a characteristic feature of the Nazi. There is no escape from the question that has faced us in this court from the very first day. In what caste were they molded? Those whose work this was, those whose deeds these were, those who created this reality, were the poisonous wells that these people drew the strength to trample human beings like vermin, to tear babies limb from limb, to engage in the dispatch of people to death for more than 5 years. It is horrifying to realize that whoever set his foot on this path no longer has a way back to human values. For this doctrine destroys his heart and transforms him into a chilly block of ice and marble wrapped up in documents, orders, instructions, and proclamations. It is with these that the accused and his like try to protect themselves when they find themselves in the hands of the law. Truth and falsehood no longer have any normal meaning for such men. Truth is whatever serves their purpose. Falsehood is whatever hinders them. This is the devious path of the Nazi from the beginning to the end. If there is regret in their hearts, it is because the loathsome work was not completed. If there is sorrow, it is because the means that were chosen were not effective enough to complete this task. After this poison has penetrated into the soul, and the subject has broken free from his duty as a human being to weigh moral values and examine his path by the light of conscience, the ground has already been prepared for the phenomenon that was named the final solution. There were no moral impediments anymore, no further break on crime. On the contrary, there was justification, enthusiasm, and the ardent desire to carry out the evil design loyally to the end. This group, which raised Hitler to power, believed in the doctrine of hatred against whoever stood in its path. This was no mass hypnosis or other psychological phenomenon in which men were gripped without possibility of liberation. It was an act of the will, deliberate and conscious. On the part of the gang of criminals which came to power, it was also a matter of meticulous and careful calculation. This wave of evil raised to positions of high authority and tremendous power men who saw in Nazism an opportunity for a career and a share in the administration, good salaries, comfortable living conditions, and who were prepared for these ends to give support to any abominable conspiracy. The hatred knew no bounds, geographical, social, or familial. Envy and fanaticism fill their hearts, envy of the belongings of others, lust and thirst for foreign territories and property that was not theirs. Their fanaticism led them in public to burn spiritual treasures, and at home to snatch the New Testament from their wife and tear it into shreds. How did this wave of hatred, evil and murder swell up? Why did Adolf Eichmann leave Austria, where he grew up and was educated, and why was he drawn to Nazi Germany? What attracted him to the false lore of the Nazi doctrine? What induced him to enter the service and to execute for them one of the most hideous and heinous projects? How could a human being do what he did? It would seem that a hatred-ridden dictator, when he finds people ready to accept his leadership, can lead them wherever he chooses, even to the depths of hell. Here too, we have heard from Dr. Gruber of the growing evil of people entangled more and more in the bonds of thraldom and slavery, of the road from which there was no return. This was the regime which created the cyclists, as Dr. Gruber called them, who trampled those beneath them and bowed down to those above them, crushing those under them and displaying joyful, heel-clicking, fawning obedience to their superior, whatever his order may be. This and more. A complete casting off of moral restraints, or what they called bourgeois morality, for the achievements of the supreme goal. For this purpose anything was permissible: falsehood, deceit, slander and murder. In their own eyes and those of their friends, they remained decent people and useful citizens. Not only were they not assailed by pangs of conscience, but they even considered themselves divine figures who could and would carry out the terror to the full. One whose heart was prepared to absorb this theory of hatred was attracted to it even from afar. One who was ready to follow Hitler, and it should not be forgotten that he was chosen the first time by 40% of those who voted to the Reichstag, gave his consent, whether wholeheartedly or hesitantly, to what was done afterwards in the heart of Europe. Adolf Eichmann said in a statement made in Israel that he should be permitted to hang himself in public as a warning to future generations. Such ideas didn't trouble him. However, when he wrote of the solution of the Jewish problem in 1941, or when he wrote about the solution of the Jewish question in 1941, or when he announced that he would jump laughing into his grave at the end of the war, enjoy that 5 million Jews had jumped into the grave with him, then he would not have expressed such thoughts as he did here. It is clear, therefore, that his statement was meaningless verbiage. He was never ready to stand trial for his deeds and to face punishment for what he had done. Therefore he escaped and was hiding under an assumed name. From time to time I would relapse to my old ways, he said to us when we showed the Sassen text to him. And occasionally I uttered nationalist slogans in Argentina, he says. In other words, after 12 years, he once again began to believe in the racist doctrine of murder. Though there was no leader above him, he would believe again in the theory of murder and race discrimination. And when his tongue was loosened, he expressed his regret at the fact that Jory has still survived.
Now, when the time has come to judge Adolf Eichmann, I shall try to put together the central proofs declaring his crime, connect them to the commencement of this trial, to the indictment, and to the opening speech. My summing up will be divided to a verbal part, which will include the central arguments in regard to the legal importation of the proofs, connecting the accused with the accusations brought against him, to a part which will be submitted in writing, prepared by my colleagues, and which will follow the opening speech, pointing out the documents and proofs brought to court in order to prove their contents. In addition, I shall submit in writing a number of lists, additional lists, with further written proof. I fear that fragments of evidence and documents, many will remain not mentioned in the summing up, nor verbally, nor in writing, but it is my strong belief that the court will consider them too. The accused does not deny that the Holocaust did happen, that the crime, unequaled in history, shocking, was committed. Millions were murdered, starved, put into unhuman conditions. All this did happen. The things related in court are heinous and atrocious, but this he admits. He had no question to put, and he made no protest to any one of the witnesses of the catastrophe who described a small fragment here in court. All which was related here about the ghettos, the tortures, the evil, the malice, the murder in camps, the loot of property, the killing of babies and children, all this he does not question and does not deny. But he maintains he was not responsible. He had no hand in it. Others shed the blood. Hitler, Himmler, Heydrich, Kaltenbrunner, Miller, Paul, Hess, not he. I shall not deal once again with the details of evidence brought to prove the terrible national holocaust which befell the Jewish nation and all the heinous acts and atrocities of this inferno which came upon Europe, where the victims were not even allowed to cry. You remember, honorable judges, the question put by the Jewish child when he saw the partisans headed by Abba Kovner who came to release those in the bunker. Mother, he asked, may one cry now? Because in the Nazi inferno, not as in the inferno of Dante, it was forbidden to sigh and it was forbidden to shed a tear. I shall not, once again, Your Honors, speak about the vast field of death described here by tens of witnesses, because these things are indelible and will not be forgotten by anyone who heard them. I want to speak and deal now with the extent of this terrible conspiracy to exterminate Jews and the position and task played by Adolf Eichmann in this conspiracy crime borne by the SS, and where he helped, aided, abetted and planned this crime. Adolf Eichmann, according to his argument, was in a very inconsiderable corner. His task was technical, of no value, drawing up charts for trains, timetables. We claim that he was right in the center of this great slaughterhouse. He was in charge of the practical implementation of those shocking crimes in all sections. The conspiracy to exterminate Jewry was not drawn up within one night and was not implemented within one night. There were 3 stages. First was the slogan, "Let us throw the Jews out of Germany." Then this developed into a new slogan, "We shall pack them up in Poland and prepare them for the final solution. We shall throw them out of Europe into the crematoria." And then the last stage, "We shall throw them into the gas chambers, into the crematoria." In these 3 stages, Adolf Eichmann fulfilled an executive task of first importance. He had a hand in all these crimes, defined in the indictment as crimes against the Jewish people, against humanity, war crimes. The extreme border where Nazi Germany reached before the war, when the activities of this movement were done in full sunlight and in the eyes of the whole world, was to force the Jews to leave the state by laws of expulsion. This was given a very open expression by Heydrich in the ministers' meeting headed by Goering on the 12th of November 1938, when he said, "The basic problem is that the Jew leaves Germany." How this was done at the time, this we heard from witnesses in court. Even at that time, terror was used, threats, coercion, cheating, camouflage, which were typical to all activities of the Nazis towards the Jews until the bitter end. At the end of March 1938, first meeting with representatives of the Jews in Vienna, a place marked later by Heydrich as a symbol and as an example for Jewish forced emigration. Adolf Eichmann introduced the systems. The witness Fleischmann told in court how Eichmann declared that he, from now on, was the ruler of Jewish life in Austria, that he was supposed to solve the Jewish problem with speed and to hold all means and ways were fit. The solution was the purging of Vienna and Austria of all its Jews, that his orders must be obeyed, that he will know how to overcome any obstacle and objection with the means necessary. And right there and then he told the Jewish representatives, who came horror-stricken before him, the legend that he was born in Sarona, understands Hebrew and Yiddish, which added a kind of spice to the myth, the terrible myth which found ears all over the ghettos in Eastern Europe. The witnesses told us what were the steps taken at the time. From the Dachau concentration camp, the news spread about the deaths of Jews. Releases from Dachau or from Buchenwald would be permitted only if 500 Jews begin to emigrate daily. This is what Eichmann said, and he admitted that much when he was questioned at the police. And on the morning after the Crystal Night, Eichmann held a speech to the representatives of the Jewish communities brought to him after they were beaten up by the rubble on the streets in Vienna. They were shivering, bleeding, and hungry. For the last 24 hours they were given no food. This is how they stood before him. The cream of Vienna Jewry. Whilst the rain is pouring down on the leaking roof of the room, and Eichmann spoke to them with fury, as described by Fleischmann. The rate of the disappearance of the Jews from Vienna is not satisfactory, he said. New means must be resorted to, and I shall know what to do from now on. And when this threat sounded in their ears, the Jews were sent away and were ordered to sign that if they reveal anything known to them, they would be put to death. The Löwenherz report, about which the accused was questioned at the police, includes detailed descriptions about those bloody days in Vienna, the confiscation of public goods and property, the despair and fear which spread amongst the dwellings of the Jews. And Heydrich said about this at the ministers' sitting on the 18th of November 38. We have set up in Vienna a center for Jewish emigration, and with this enterprise we succeeded to take out of Austria 50,000 Jews. This great success caused many rulers of the Nazi regime to copy the Eichmann system from Vienna all over the German Reich. Lindenstrauss, the witness, told the court that in January or February 39, representatives of the German Jewry were sent to Vienna in accordance with an order by Eichmann. About this trip, we heard the testimony of Dr. Benno Cohen and Dr. Meyer. And when Eichmann ordered the representative of German Jewry to regard and learn from his exemplary system in Vienna, he lectured to them that this must be followed by them. The minimum 1,000 passports daily. And when the head of the Berlin Jewish community, Stahl, tried to point out the obstacles, the difficulties, Eichmann said, "This does not concern me. This is your business. You find a way of emigration, and I want those passports." This is how he concluded. You will be responsible for the implementation in the spirit of my words. Otherwise, you know what to expect. We knew, said Lindenstraum, that this put an end to the period of emigration from Germany, and the period of expulsions began. Meyer testified about an expulsion industry which he saw in Vienna. He said it was terrible. He also related about his meeting with the accused in Berlin in March 39, when in the Gestapo offices he was introduced by Eichmann as one of the Jews who had the impudence to set the Jews in Austria against the steps taken against Jews there. And there and then Eichmann informed that a center for Jewish emigration will be set up in Berlin, and that the funds of the Jewish National Fund in Germany must be transferred to the Gestapo. Dr. Benno Cohen also testified about the meeting when he was invited to Eichmann's office. He was the speaker. With shouts and threats, he reacted to an article which appeared in the foreign press and which called him a bloodhound, an expression which he is in future about to adopt against Jewish functionaries. He cursed the Jewish leaders who dared speak to the Jews in Vienna, threatening that if such a thing ever happens again, you will go to a concert lager. And when Dr. Stahl requested that emigration from Germany should be carried out in an orderly manner and not in a wild expulsion to across the borders, Eichmann answered with crude threats, and those present were convinced that they would be taken right away to a concentration camp. Later, Eichmann informed that on Kurfürstenstrasse 116 Berlin, an center for emigration following the steps taken in Vienna will be set up, and Jewish leaders will be responsible that the emigration quota is fulfilled. That is, already in the months February and March 39, Eichmann was busy in the center in Berlin, the Center for Jewish Emigration. This was done, of course, on the strength of his appointment by Heydrich to set up this center, a task handed over from Heydrich to Miller, and Eichmann was actually employed, at least partially. Later, Eichmann organized the very same action in the Protectorate. These were only the beginnings. But we can tell about the man from the actions of his boyhood. Therefore, we should give attention. His system is already noticeable during those first days. And we read in a private letter sent by Eichmann at the time, and I quote, "The Jewish functionaries are completely in my hands. I make them run as I wish. They will not dare to take one step without my orders." Or in another letter, and I quote again, "The president of the Jewish community, Dr. Friedman, was sent to Dachau to prison and is at the disposal for possible clarifications." This is the period where Eichmann was active, even according to his own words, gladly, with the joy of creating. This is the period he relies on when he argues that he was seeking for a constructive solution. And he has the Nazi impudence now to inform and declare that he helped Jews leave Germany, something which they wanted anyhow. He is forced to admit that the emigration was hurried and was the result of persecution and fear horrors which the Nazis implemented, that each emigrant was forced to leave behind all his property to the state. This criminal gang impoverished the Jews and drove them out. The argument that the accused only helped them to help them out when they were in a tight spot. This is typical of his cynism. And this is like a band of robbers putting fire to a house in all four corners and throwing the owners of the house through the window, robbing them at the same time, and later come and apologize that it was better for the landlord to be thrown out of the window rather than be burnt alive in the house. The conspirators to the crime against Jews, those who dealt with arrests, deportations across the border, the setting fire to synagogues, the spoilage of property, and forced emigration, were men of the SD and the Gestapo. Each one of those scoundrels had a defined task in this conspiracy, openly defined by Alfred Rosenberg and published in the Völkischer Beobachter. Only when the last Jew leaves Germany will the Jewish problem be solved here. The task fulfilled by the accused amongst the perpetrators of, if we compare sections 1 and 2, we shall realize that all offenses detailed in paragraph 2 are included in fact in paragraph 1. According to paragraph 1, a person may be convicted because of an offense committed against certain persons if the commission against these persons was committed as an explicit intention against a group of people, and that the act done by the offender against these people was a kind of a partial implementation of his malicious intention against the whole group, be it the Jewish nation or be it any other civil population. We maintain that Eichmann did not deal with the Jews who came to his hand as Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. It was not important to him who this man was. He hit those individuals because he aimed at the group, at the Jewish people. And this is how the crimes included in the indictment in counts 1, 3, and 7. There is no doubt that he was only a part of this enormous machine which dealt with the persecution of Jews. This was from the very beginning, and this is how it went on until the very end. He was not the only one to set up this machinery of Nazi persecution which brought hundreds of thousands of Jews to escape in a hurry from the Reich and from the annexed territories. With him there were tools, and there was the wicked regime, because without them he could not have succeeded in the implementation of this plan. The rules of evil, the concentration camps, all this army of torturers advanced his activities and aided his plan. What they all did together is to create the conditions from which the Jew fled. All this